Greetings, fellow makers of puppets and things that seem to be alive. I have a bunch of tricks to share with you today, and I hope that this will help some of us. It certainly will help me build better puppets in the future, so I just wanted to make sure that others know about it. First thing is, Worbla has great application possibilities for puppet making. I see it a lot in cosplay. People make fake armor out of this, masks, especially weapons, armor pieces, like I said. But it can be used to make puppets. I recently tried, and I succeeded in making eye blinkers for a giant puppet out of Worbla. For the eyelid pieces were made shaped on a ball of plastic. I used Worbla on top of it. And how to do that so that it doesn't stick. When it's hot, it's sticky, so you put some baby powder on your shape. Anyways, besides that, I thought it could have other possibilities, so I've been correcting my mistakes and gluing tiny pieces in precise areas by using this trick. You use an alcohol torch, which is designed for people who make dental prostheses, but nowadays is used a lot by sculptors who use oil-based clay, oil and wax-based clays like monster clay. So I've had this for many years. I have two now, just in case one breaks down. Never happened, but just in case, it's good to have a backup. Or sometimes you need two. Why not? Maybe you have an assistant coming to help. But these are like $15 or less US for this torch, which is a plastic bottle with a metal cap on top. And there's a little coil of a tube that when you squeeze the bottle, you send the fumes of the alcohol into the flame, and it turns into a torch. I don't know if you can see that flame. Let me put something black in front of it. Might be able to see it better. You see that? So it gives you extreme precision compared to the heat gun. And then you can go back and see that line on her head, probably. Well, I can make it almost invisible by heating that area and pressing it down and maybe drag my fingers across of it a little bit. If that doesn't work enough, I can go back with a tool and actually rub it with a heated tool. And you can get a pretty good result. Later, when it's cooled down, you can actually sand that down and then maybe go back again with some heat. You can carve it with a knife if the blade is sharp enough, like I did for her wrists, and you don't see the tool marks anymore because I went back with heat on top. So how did I build this little puppet? I just tied a knot. Let me start over here and show you. I take some synthetic rope. This is braided nylon of some kind. Maybe it's another fiber, but it's synthetic. And you tie a knot. You want to make the knot really tight so it doesn't unravel. Actually, it won't be able to, but just in case. You tighten it with some pliers, and then you cut off the excess, leaving a little bit, just give you more of a surface to grab on. And you take a piece of Worbla. I'm using scraps for this project. A large sheet of Worbla is about $80 Canadian. And I just heat the piece with a pair of pliers so I don't burn myself too much. I try to heat both sides. Sometimes I only heat one side because, again, I'll manipulate it with my fingers. But you can actually capture the knot with your Worbla, because Worbla sticks to itself really well when it's hot. And then from this, you can build your body part, around it. Like, for example, if I had started with if this was to be a head, then I would create this core at first, let it cool down to stabilize it. I don't want the knot to be wobbly inside, so just to be sure it's stable, squeeze it really well and then leave it alone. Let it cool down. If you don't want to take a chance, reheat it a tiny bit just to send that heat inside, and then maybe you want to roll it on the table, but not too much. Just let that rest until it's stable, and then you can go back and keep adding to it. If you want to control the shape of it, because yes you can use some old clumps of it and reshape it like clay, but for precision's sake, I found out that if I cut strips of even length and width, I can control how much I add, especially if you're making pairs of things like 2 arms, 2 legs. Or if you want something symmetrical, you heat your piece to start it, make it sticky, and then press it down to stabilize it. Then I like to hold it, put some heat on both. Try to avoid the heat on the rope, because the rope will shrink and get weaker because of its nature. And you keep on wrapping. You heat, you wrap, you heat, you wrap. You could also do coils that are even. Instead of wrapping one piece around it, I didn't heat enough. Keep adding heat to both surfaces to make sure it really sticks, because if you don't use enough heat, it will not bond, it will separate eventually. But as long as your last layer on top is really well sealed down, like this piece was lacking a bit of heat, then it shouldn't actually unravel itself. But if there's going to be a lot of stress, just keep adding. So you can build up a head out of this pretty quickly. I built these 2 figures in 1 work day, including experimental time. I had done this before, but never to this level. These are the smallest puppets I've ever built. Well, he's more like a figure with a moving head, but she's an actual puppet for the same show. So this, you can build things up really fast with this method. Of course, it looks like some kind of French croissant right now with all those twirls, those lines, but you can get rid of those in the next stage. You know, you can let that rest, but I prefer not to wait. I just reheat the surface as soon as I've applied it, and then I massage it down. I try not to touch it for more than a second at a time. Maybe at this point you want to let it rest, but you know, for now I think it works really well to just keep it warm. And you keep going back with the heat. Try not to burn your fingers. Never point the flame at your fingers. Never point the flame at or close to the rope. If you get too close, I prefer to heat the tool on top of the flame until it's really hot, and then go back and flatten those lines, blend those edges between the 2 layers, and then you can go back, you can rub it. At some point it gets more tacky than slidey, so you keep on heating your tool. Don't touch your tool because you don't know how hot it is until you touch it. It's not pleasant. You can go back and do the edges more smoothly where the rope is coming out. And this is just a regular spatula tool, by the way, the same one I use all the time for clay work. I put some tape around the handle. I had this tool for over 12 years, and actually I should say now over 15 years. I had it in a kit as a gift, and it became my favorite tool. I use it for every project I ever work on. But just last week I thought about fattening the handle with some gaffer's tape, because that's what I had. I don't want to use masking tape because it gets gummy. I'm probably going to rip it out eventually and make a more permanent handle now that I know I like the shape. It's just the most expensive handle I've ever made, considering how expensive gaffer's tape is. So you see, that's how I make a head, for example. Then I would build, you know, maybe I would put another knot here that would be somewhere, you know, in the torso to make sure that it locks in place. And then you just build a torso around that, and you can make arms and stuff like that. This little lady has a special advantage. Her shoulders move sympathetically because I merged one arm, I slid the rope into a hole that's bigger than the rope, and then I did the merging on the other side just at the right distance. It was a bit tricky to do that so small, but that allows for her to have a whole lot of free movement. So when she swims in water, because she will have to swim in water, her arms will move by themselves, making her look a lot more alive than she is. She's based on a doll in the story. She's a doll, so I limited her joints, and I'm glad I did, because they were flailing all around, because there's only 1 puppet here for the whole show. It's a solo show, so she doesn't have like 3 hands. So 1 rod makes her move as much as she needs to, on dry land and in water. So just wanted to share this technique with you. You can build up puppet parts. Of course, something bigger would be too heavy and too expensive to make, but something like super small, like what I've seen Micropodium do, or other people, they could use this material. It's not the most precise, but it's precise enough. You can add things on top of that. I intend to add some facial features with more of the same stuff. I mean, I tried to do it here, and I burned some of his features because of how long I exposed the face to the heat. Sometimes you're a bit too much in a hurry, but I'll probably just gonna shave it down with my craft knife. When the blade is really sharp, you can actually just carve it down and make it smooth again. And I'll probably just go back with some epoxy putty and make some detailing on their faces, because I want her especially to be waterproof. So before I make her, before I paint her, I'll definitely need to sand her down and put some waterproof primer on top of her, and then I'll paint her. Then I'll put a waterproof varnish on top of that, and then I'll give her some hair so that they'll flow in the water. But this whole system of just the captured rope is much smoother. It's quiet. There's no metal against metal grinding sounds or squeaking sounds. There's no tick tick tick. It's always quiet. It's a universal movement. It's great for shoulders and necks even though this is a new one for me, the fact that it can roll like this infinitely, I'm going to use that in the future. I love it. So hopefully this will come in handy for people. For the head rod, I forgot to mention, the head rod is built just out of a piece of memory wire that I bent into a loop. It's actually not actual memory wire, it just has some memory to it. These are the little flags that you buy for your garden or for your, I don't even know what they're for exactly. I think they're for renovations, like outdoors, construction worker things. There are a series of flags that are on rods like this, plastic orange or red flags. I just bought these because I like the caliber of the wire. It's about this long. So that's what I used. I bent it in half to make a handle here, and I just used it with some gaffer's tape to make a more comfortable handle. But yeah, so you bend the rod and you build your Worbla on top of it with heat. Make sure you're patient and try to be precise. Like her hips, I must have wrapped extra strips like this, you know, front, back, or maybe sometimes one long strip. I try not to go over it twice. It's just like maybe I'll do a piece on this side, then a piece on this side, blend them, and go back, add a bone in the middle. Her breasts were done with tiny squares or tiny circles that you add, then you blend them in. So you can build a whole body like this based on a sketch, of course, and your knowledge of anatomy. So yeah, Worbla is amazing once you have 2 layers or 3 stuck together. By itself, you will eventually break it. It will create a crease, and it will start showing weakness. So if you blend it with heat, if you glue it together, 2 layers at least, then it's going to be much stronger. 3 layers is ideal because it's going to be really, really strong. You can create ears that stick out, fingers, wings. It's got a bit of flex to it as well, as long as it's not too thick. But yeah, you can create handles for puppets. You can create all sorts of small accessories in a very short amount of time. Like here, I just created this little teardrop shape at the end of my thing, and this accepts paints beautifully. You can paint directly with acrylic paint, but it's recommended to prime it first. I like to use Zinsser products. I use both BIN, which is the oil-based version that is fully compatible with all kinds of paint when it's dry. But my favorite, the one I use the most for paper mache, for example, is Bullseye 123, also from Zinsser. So these are my favorite primers. So she's gonna have to be done with bin because it's more, it's gonna resist, I think, water a little bit better. I'll make a test. I might decide to use Bullseye after all, but this is gonna happen at another time. So you want to see her swim? I can show you how she swims. I have my old salad spinner here. Tried to clean it as much as possible, but it's got some calcium stains or something. So she actually swims very well. The water resists her movement and makes them move, especially her arms. So I don't need anything more. I think I don't need any other rod to make her look like she's swimming. Like maybe you want to just go up and down. I'm still experimenting to see how she moves, but my customer will find her own motions. But already this is much more than I expected. And then she can rest against the pool like this with the rod. So very excited about this. That's why I wanted to share so much. If you need more information about this, I do offer customized online training via different platforms. So contact me, creaturiste@gmail.com, for much more information than this.